Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me join you today. It's been great working with the Preservica crew, and it's great to continue to have these conversations about the need for digital preservation. I just wanted to take a little time before I decide to share about our collection experience with you to just give some context about what it's like trying to do digital archives work at a small college. I'm an academic archivist working in college archives, and we're considering Preservica Starter as a digital preservation solution and also as a public access portal. So we're kind of in a pilot phase with this right now. And so just to give you a little bit of background about our work, our team has worked really hard over probably the last decade to secure digital repository solutions, right? Things as diverse as content from the college website, institutional academic records, social media, digitized historical artifacts, right, through a content management system. And we're doing well with these. But as a small private college with just 2 archivists and 1 staff person, we don't really have a top to bottom preservation solution, not in-house and not as an option for working with a vendor due to a large, budget constraint. And you guys may find yourself in this situation as well, which is why I'm being rather honest about our current scenario. And so what does this mean for our work? It means that all current and future digitization projects, and we do have a big AV digitization project going on right now, and all digital records transfers, and we just launched our campus-wide records management program last year. All of that is supported only through standard campus IT services like a cloud-based industry cold storage solution, right? So baseline backup. And we all know that this does not constitute or provide digital preservation, services from top to bottom. In fact, things like fixity checks, automated metadata capture, file migration, which are all really essential to full-scale digital preservation, none of that is happening right now in our current situation. And actually, more recently, we've had some red flags like data corruption being noticed. We've had older unreadable born digital files, as well as obsolescent optical media that we're constantly finding. In addition, we've also had the challenge of getting grant funding that would allow us to do further digitization work, because some grantors have found that our digital preservation activities are really not acceptable for long-term preservation, and therefore digitizing the content might put it at risk. So we're kind of at this stage in our work where we need an affordable digital preservation solution of some kind, and we're really actively looking for that now. And that's why we're here looking into Starter, and it's why I've been really privileged to work with the Starter team in the beta testing phase. And so today I am hoping to share with you a little bit about how this pilot is going. So I'll stop sharing my webcam and start sharing my screen if I can here. All right. So this is the public view of our digital collections in Starter, and you can see that they have been kind enough to, Preservica has been kind enough to provide some customization here. We have our nice institutional header. We've got some specific information about our archive. There's even a logo for the college up here. So for those of you who often battle with your marketing department, perhaps this is on your wish list. As I click through here to all of my public collections, you'll see that we actually have 3 current live collections in this pilot project. Right now, they're kind of as these like long cards, but you can also view them as a table, which sometimes at the collection view is preferable. And so we have 2 kind of types of collections here. The first 2 are presidential records, and the last one here is actually more recent, about a very recent renovation on campus. And in addition, the first 2 collections you see here are actually the result of our AV digitization process that we've been going through over the last couple years, and you can see it's content from the 80s and 90s, as old as the 80s and 90s. The third collection here is all actually brand new, born digital content. We just had this transferred to us like maybe last week. So it's a kind of two different use cases, and we're seeing if Starter can serve our purposes in both. In addition, one thing that I wanted to make clear is that I've taken two different metadata strategies with these collections. For the presidential records, I have approached these as providing a lot more rich or detailed metadata records. And for the more recent Born Digital collection, I've actually opted for a very baseline, almost non-existent metadata because of the size of the collection and because of how quickly we wanted to get it online. And right here you can see that all these collections have just a couple lines of description. But if I go into the Rita Bornstein collection here, you'll see that there's some more information to go through. You can actually sort all your content by title, description, date, or you can also sort by format. It's nice to be able to see which formats are represented in each collection here. So those are some navigation options. And you may actually notice here that one of these does not look like the other. And that's because this one here at the top, which looks like it has very little information, I've purposely left bare. And actually, this is what a file looks like if you simply upload it to Preservica and make it visible. So basically, the title of the file becomes the title of the digital object itself. So I just wanted you guys to kind of see what that would look like if you basically didn't do anything to the digital object that you upload. However, with this collection, we really wanted to make sure we had good description. President Bornstein is still around, and we actually work closely with her. So we, of course, wanted to make sure that these recently digitized AV files were well described. And I will actually select her inauguration video here so that you guys can see what an item level description and view looks like. So you can see that there's some general description here at the top, but also the Dublin core metadata is represented below. That should look familiar to what Andrew showed you previously. We've made an effort to include information about the format, the original date, as opposed to the publication date, right, which is the date it went online. We've also tried to reference our physical content where possible and make sure our AV project identifier is here so that we can track where that is in our other records for the archives. And one thing that I wanted to show you guys, and this is going to be kind of an old school video, so just prepare yourself. There's some good usability happening here because not only do you have content description to the right, but you can actually watch the video as you scroll through the content. And so that means it's pretty easy for an end user to see what's going on the same page all at once. And I don't see a whole lot of other systems doing that well, so that is a win for the end user. I will not put you guys through that any longer, but I just thought it'd be helpful for you to see that in action. So I'd actually like to go back to all my collections here, and one of the other usability features that I think is working well here is this breadcrumb label. So you can kind of see where you are in the context of all the collections that are within the public user interface. So I'm going to go back to all my public assets here, which are all my collections. And I'd like to kind of show you what that bare bones approach has yielded with our Born Digital materials. So that's this Kathleen W. Rollins Hall renovation collection. And you can see there's no special sentence-like descriptions here, and we've just got a few tiles that show a few options for moving forward with maybe some thumbnails. One of the things that you should probably know about the way that content is organized within collections is it's often alphanumeric. So If I hadn't used this numbering system, it may be that these would not appear in the order that I want them to, like this. So this was a simple solution for me to make sure that we're retaining that original order of the records creators that gave us this content. Let's see, if I go to the first tile here, you'll actually see, again, continued very baseline, almost non-existent metadata. And so this is just naming something appropriately, uploading it and ingesting it, and this is what you're getting. And you can also see that there's hierarchies of folders happening here. Again, no file metadata, but I did want to point out that because the viewer is very interactive here, you can actually click through to content quite easily. And so if I wanted to see the articles that were being referenced here, I could actually click through, and the viewer allows you to kind of get context that way, if that's possible through linking in the document. Obviously, this is a Word document, so that has made it possible. And if I wanted to dive down into these folders further, you would see another reason that we decided to do almost no description on this is actually because there are a lot of photos related to this collection. And that's in the events folder here. And if I go to the title signing event from May 2019, there's a photo folder here, or a sub collection, I guess you could call it. And these may take a couple minutes to load. And you can see they're just image 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's not very helpful to the end user if they're searching. If you use the card view, it might be helpful for just visually browsing these images, and I think that I'll catch up in just a minute. But one of the things that became very clear to me as I was dealing with kind of a lot of images all at once in a single upload is that it would be really helpful to have a batch metadata option, because to do this work in advance and quickly label who's in these photos or where they took place, that would be a wonderful addition to what the metadata suite in Starter offers. And it's my understanding that that actually is on the roadmap. Here we go, they're listed as cards now, and you can kind of visually browse. And I know everyone who's in these photos, but they're not labeled here. So searching is not going to be as helpful as browsing in this limited metadata option. But at least you could see what it would look like if you just simply uploaded content and no effort at metadata at all. So I'd actually like to jump over now into the Explorer space that Andrew was in before, so that you guys can get a little bit behind the scenes view of what you just saw the public access version of. And so this is my home Explorer page. It'll look almost exactly like what Andrew already showed everyone. But you can see there are more than 3 collections represented here, and that's because some of these are public, like the ones in blue here, and some of them are private and separate. And I just wanted to say that that is a really critical and recent addition to the metadata options in the Explorer. And as an archivist, it's really absolutely a true regular need. And I know that other archivists on this call must agree. A lot of times you are working with content that has maybe a potential future release date, trustee records, faculty meeting minutes, and you don't want to let those go unpreserved or just set them aside to corrupt. And you want to make sure they're in your preservation system, but you can't release them yet. So this is a great solution for those kind of things. Let's go to the Bornstein collection that we just looked at through the public user interface and see what that item looks like behind the scenes. This metadata is exactly what we were seeing in our public user interface, and I could edit it easily. But that preservation history that Andrew was talking about is equally important to us, and it's actually something we don't have a solution for now. So I would say it's even more important to us. There's kind of 2 kinds of important metadata here. Andrew already explained this a little bit. One is the preservation metadata, of course, like the original file name, being able to access it, its format. And the advanced information is also really helpful because we have to remember this is probably not the last system that this content is going to be in. We are in the forever business. So we have to make sure we know this technical information for if this content needed to move elsewhere or be copied into a new space with different technical capabilities. One thing that has been really helpful for us for video content is the exact duration is always listed here if it's a video type file format. And we usually like to include that in our descriptions as well so that folks know what they're signing up for if they agree to click play in these virtual spaces. Another thing that I just wanted to emphasize, and Andrew already mentioned it, is the history of the asset is really critical as well. This is almost like an audit trail for what happens to this content. Again, we have no solution for this currently. We don't know how our items in cold storage are being affected by anyone who has access to them. We just know that they're there. So being able, especially if you're working in a team environment, to see who has affected the item, when it was ingested, how often it's updated, the dates of the modifications. This is all really critical to doing full-scale digital preservation work. And it's something we really don't have a solution for now. Okay. So I kind of explained how the metadata piece of this is pretty easy and straightforward. You've got, Andrew already mentioned, you've got a choice between mods and Dublin Core. We're using Dublin Core. And also the fact that this is standards driven is critical for our work. What I'd really like to emphasize is beyond that is actually the hierarchy that this system allows you to utilize when you're doing curatorial work, when you're organizing collections. So for example, when I was organizing our recent records transfer from the Kathleen W. Rollins Hall collection, you have this kind of tile view, but you also have this wonderful hierarchy here. So you can make sure you know where folders are living. And you remember the events folder that had so many layers and all that content from the photo from our photographer, you can actually see where that's living and how many steps down it is. And for example, if I wanted to move this private operations planning tile to maybe a different part of this collection, for example, maybe in the communications folder, I simply clicked and dragged. It let me know what was going on in the background. I went to the communications folder. Let's see. There we go. And now you can see operations planning folder is in here. To be clear, one of the things that I think is important is this folder is public communications, but this folder within it is still private. That privacy setting traveled with the content as I moved it. And that's critical because you don't want to accidentally have an email folder move into some kind of public space and then have a problem with information being publicly accessible that should not be. So the Explorer has really worked well in organizing content and kind of moving things around easily, just like it would be in a file explorer on your own machine. One thing that you may want to consider if you want more of a repository-wide view rather than maybe a collection or metadata view is the dashboard. And that's something that Andrew spoke about as well in right before he handed things off to me. One of the ways that I have used this space is to check to see which content was affected last, and also to make sure that the content I deleted is deleted. We have, for example, had duplicates we wanted to remove, and I can see those here. In addition, you may find yourself having to plan the use of your storage, digital storage. You can check to see what your storage space allowed and how much is left right up here. In addition, there's also a quick link to your public portal, and I'll just show you what that looks like. It opens in a new tab, and why that's really handy is you might want to be doing work in your Explorer here, doing things, moving it around, and then refreshing and seeing what they look like in your public interface. So that's really nifty, and I've made use of that quite a bit. The last thing that I have found surprisingly helpful is actually the format diagram here. We really considered AV as one of the critical needs that we have for preservation and for access. And I intended to put lots of videos up, but as you can see, a lot of our files are PDFs. So that was surprising to me and something to keep in mind, that there may be content there that you're not even thinking of, maybe README files, or there were a lot of meeting minutes, it turns out, right? One thing that we were talking about as a group yesterday as we were preparing for this presentation is it might be good to have like a total number of files up here in the corner, right? So you could get an even higher level count of how many total files you have in the system, even though of course you know how much space you have left. So I think the dashboard is really helpful, again, if you're working in a Teams environment, and or even if you have student assistants and you need to figure out who's doing what when, and to kind of track the progress of or the workflow of a project. I mentioned before, we're all in the forever business, and so making sure this content is secure and ready for others to work with down the line, that's kind of our #1 goal.